I am born in Basel, Switzerland. It's a town on the northwest corner, bordering to Germany and France. I'm born in 1947. My name, my passport used to say Kurt Otto Bigler. I grew up in Basel my whole entire life. In Switzerland, at age 15, 1963, I started an apprenticeship as a hairdresser in Basel, of course, and that lasted 3 years. After that, all of us guys have to go to the army. It's 17 weeks the first time, and then all kinds of 3 weeks yearly after that. After 17 weeks, I couldn't wait to leave Switzerland. A little bit too organized for me. You know, would you believe that in Switzerland, if a train that's supposed to be there at 2:15 is going to be late 3 minutes, they're actually announcing it. That's Switzerland for you. That's a little bit too much for me. Did my apprenticeship, finished among the best in the country at that time. Did my army, and then I had a girlfriend who left to Tunisia, Sidi Bouzid. She was a guide, and she convinced me that I should go and work as a hairdresser in Tunisia. When I got there, by that time, she found another guy and moved on. So there I was on my own in Tunisia looking for a job. And I went to an office, hotelier, and I knew I'd find a job somewhere at the hotel. So I had an interview with a guy, and I told the man, I don't care where you put me, but it has to be on the ocean. I'm from Switzerland, never saw the ocean, so if possible, I like a job anywhere near the ocean. Jumped into the bus, and we drove inland for hours. And we ended up in an oasis called Gafsa. Went out of the bus, had a nice yellow jacket on, grey pants, little suitcase, and around me was 2 cafes full of men smoking water pipes. Everybody staring at me. I had no idea what the hell is going on here. I went to the cab driver, gave him the address. We drove 5K through an oasis. Now the end of the road was this fabulous hotel called Jugurtha Palace. It looked like an Indian palace. They had 2 black portiers, red jackets, gold here, gold there. And there I was at the hotel. The director's wife was Swiss-German actually. I spoke some French at the time, beside my German. And so there I was, my first job in Tunisia. Little shop, beauty shop, quite beautiful. The barman assumed I was gay. Being a hairdresser, we all have to be gay, right? And every night he would say to me, Monsieur Claude, you know, voulez-vous coucher avec moi? Look, buddy, you're barking up the wrong tree. I know I'm a hairdresser, but you know what? I like women. And every day there was 2 buses arriving with tourists on the way to Djerba. In one of those buses was a father and his daughter. She was 17 years old, I was 20. And the girl and I fell in lust. And the barman saw me coming out of a room one morning and told the director I was fired. That wasn't cool. So then the girl says to me, my dad wants to talk to you. So, oh my God. Here we go, more trouble. I had no money, I wasn't even paid yet. I didn't know how to get back to Switzerland. And her dad says to me, well, Kurt, it's not fair to lose your job because you loved my daughter. My daughter insists that we take you with us for the next week. We're going to Djerba to a Club Med. I invite you. Off I went to Club Med, perfect, ocean, sand, camels. And after a few days, Thursday comes, the chef de village, the guy in charge, says to me, I hear you're a hairdresser. And the last mine, he broke his hip water skiing. Do you want a job here? So I jumped at it, and I had this job, had my own room, food, and everything. And so I was a hairdresser at Club Med in Djerba, Tunisia. There was a waiter there, a German guy, who said to me, hey, buddy, you and I should be in Montreal Expo. That's what's happening these days. So he put this flea in my head, and I was very ambitious at the time. And I realized Club Med was fun, but, you know, it's sort of limited. So I went home to my hometown with this guy, And my mother gave us some money to go to Canada. We went to Canada, Montreal, one-way ticket, no visa, nothing. You're supposed to have a return ticket, but they were so busy at customs, nobody checked. So my first job was dishwashing at Expo for the Swiss Pavilion. And the guy said to me, hey, you're a hairdresser? He said, we have 74 young women here, hostesses. We need a hairdresser. If you like to, I install you at the apartment where all the women live. We give you a room there and you can work out of the apartment. I applied for immigration and got that within 6 months. Montreal was kind of nice. Expo finished and I thought I missed Switzerland. I went back and I realized I didn't want to be here. So I went back to Montreal where I had a girlfriend. I saw an ad in the paper from Bermuda looking for hairdresser, no taxes. So well, that's interesting. I applied for the job and I got it. By now I spoke some English, not great, but I spoke enough English to get the job in Bermuda. I spent a year there, super cool place, had a lot of fun. Went back to Montreal, then my girlfriend and I took a train to go to Vancouver, which I totally loved, except at the time when I arrived, it was winter. It rained every day. And so I worked for Raymond Salons in Park Royal across the bridge. And every morning when I went across the bridge, it was rainy. I never saw the ocean underneath Lionsgate Bridge. So then I told my boss, I can't stand it. It's too rainy for me. I need something else. I want to go fishing, I want to go skiing. Well, he says, I've got a great job for you, Prince George. And he gave me a little title, style director. You know, he knew how to sort of get me into this. So I accepted that. And he said, here's a charge card, rent a car, you have a week to go to Prince George, get the fishing rod, you need it. I went up the Fraser Valley, I stopped my car, walked down to the river, and there were all these 1,000 trouts this big. I never saw a salmon in my life before. I assumed they were giant trouts. Of course, they were salmon, they were spawning. So that was great. Went to Prince George, there was a hill I could ski, Table Mountain. But, you know, Prince George is Prince George. So after 1 year, it was like another hick town. So I went back to Switzerland. I went to work in a very affluent skiing resort called Gstaad, where all the hoity-toity movie stars and royalty that were discreet went to Gstaad. The rest went to St. Moritz. So Gstaad had Liz Taylor, Julie Christie, Queen Juliana, David Niven. And all these people had to have their hair done somewhere. There's only 2 salons in Gstaad. So all those people had to come to one of us. I couldn't cut hair by that time. I was doing fancy up hairdos. Grace Kelly was my type of clientele. Julie Christie had nice hair and I didn't cut hair well. I was blow drying this haircut, it fell into place. God, my God, this is amazing. Who cuts hair like that? She says, that's a son. Now we're in 69, I think. I said, wow, I love to work with him. Oh, she says, I'll help you. And I said, yeah, right. Julie Christie's going to help me getting a job in London. That was Christmas. So that was it. She came back in March. She said, by the way, I took you sassoons. Any young guy that I recommend that does Liz Taylor's hair and Grace Kelly and speaks languages. By now I spoke fluent English, French, German, some Italian. She says, if you want to, you can go there, give him my name. Luckily, I met a girl in Gstaad, a rich girl, which I dated for a few months. And she told her dad had antique businesses in St. Albans, lots of money. And she told her dad that her boyfriend was going to go to London working with sassoon. And he realized, chances are, he's going to be apprenticing for a while, not working. He's going to make no money whatsoever. Look, he says, if he's going to do that, he can stay in our basement suite. And he has breakfast and dinner. But he has to do all of our French and our hair. He needs to practice. I said, hey, I accept. Good. So I went for the interview. I'm sitting there, I'm looking through a room where the stylist dropped off the haircuts and an apprentice blowing it dry. All these cool haircuts, asymmetric bobs, 5-point haircuts, No roller, no back combing, nothing, just blowing it dry, shaking the hair. And I thought to myself, hey, Claude, you don't have a freaking idea how to do any of this stuff. So when the manager came to interview me, I was smart enough to say, look, I'm the guy Julie Christie recommended, but look, I said, just because I've done Julie Christie's hair, it doesn't mean I can cut hair. Matter of fact, I haven't got a clue to get these looks you do here. But I realize it's the future, it's the woman's future, and I need to learn that. So if you want to, I'd like to apprentice for you. He looked at me and says, wow, I like your attitude. When do you want to start? I started the next day. Within 3 months, I was a junior stylist cutting hair. I knew they had a shop in Toronto. I said, could I work for you guys in Toronto? I knew I was going to work there for a few years and then go to Vancouver. The answer was yes, we need somebody in Toronto. So off I went to Sassoon's in Toronto, Avenue Road. There was 2 Kurds. One was Austrian, one was Swiss. So the boss said, look, one of you guys has to change the name. So I became Claude. And that's Sassoon's when they needed somebody to do fashion magazines, because now I could cut hair. But before, I was a hairdresser doing fancy stuff, Grace Kelly and stuff. So I could take these haircuts and do something different than they did. So when they wanted a guy from Sassoon's for a fashion show, he would send me. Malcolm Smith was the manager of Sassoon's, and he was the last personal apprentice for Vidal Sassoon, meaning he was just a carbon copy of Sassoon's. Everything he did was Sassoon. So I worked with him for 2 years, and I knew after 2 years I owned it. I owned this haircutting. I can now leave. So in the meantime, I got married to my wife Erica, and we went to Vancouver with a VW camper. I couldn't afford a house in Vancouver, so I bought a house in Surrey. My partner was Christopher. He also was Sassoon trained, and he couldn't afford a house in Vancouver, so he bought a house in Delta. He had kids. So between us, we now had a place outside Vancouver, so we decided to open our own shop. I was clever with woodwork, so I built a bunch of chairs, and I built my own first salon in Guildford. Very successful. We had clients from Seattle coming to Surrey, Guildford to get the haircut. Eventually, we went to Vancouver, 4th Avenue, and I opened a place with Christopher called Triangles. Did that for a few years. Then I went to Europe, camping around for a year, went back and rented a chair on Robson Street, became a partner with Maureen Fielding at Focus 2 and BT and Robson. Then I opened my first micro shop in the Vancouver Tower, small place, one-man show, and this was my future. No perms, just cut natural colors and highlights and nothing else. And then I bought a studio on 4th and Main, and everything I bought was sort of run-down apartments. The farm in Surrey was run down. I fixed it up with my woodworking skills, sold it, made 30,000, 40,000 bucks. The last apartment I sold for like $400,000 in Vancouver. In the meantime, I met Diane, my wife, in the 90s. Her mom lived right here in this house, and she passed away. Diane decided she would pay out her siblings, and so we came here. In 1990, I bought a beautiful 47-foot wooden classic sailboat, Edmund Ketch, 47 feet. I bought a liverboat slip in Spruce Harbor Marina, Falls Creek. I moved on that boat in 1990, and a year later I met and married my wife, Diane Cartwright. We lived together on the boat for the next 19 years. And it was close to my studio in Main and 4th. I could walk to work. We could row the rowboat to go shopping on Granville Island. In a way, it was a perfect life, except for outside the marina, downtown Vancouver, got too busy for me. That's why eventually I did move to Courtney. I had and still have a very cool website, ClaudeBigler.com. I went around 5th Avenue with my business cards to business owners, women boutiques and what have you, and said, I'm Claude Bigler, here's my card, check me out on my website. I said, I'll offer you a free haircut and color. If somebody asks you who did your hair, please tell them. That's all you have to do. And then I found a place to rent in Cumberland, $50 a day. I rented it 2 days a week, and the first month I made $3,400. I had an ad in the paper, cost me $60 a week, and I made $3.4 thousand the first month I was here. My focus went to people in my age group. So I realized there's very few hairdressers who really are hell-bent to make a woman who's 70 or 80 feel attractive. I had some money left and I bought the place at Duncan & Ford, took my woodworking skill, went in there, just emptied it out, put in new floors, every wall was mirrored, put in the shop. And I wanted to have something I don't have to babysit. So I decided I want to rent out my shop and just charge enough rent to cover all of my costs. So when I go and do a haircut, if I make $1, I'll make $1. For them, it was a hell of a great deal. And most of the people from then are still with me today. They have to pay the rent, be polite, do good work, don't steal. That's it. And so I don't have to worry. I don't have to worry at all who's there now, who locks up, who opens. I just come and go as if I am an employee. So I have no stress. Perfect. And so here I am, 78 years old, still really loving cutting hair. I mean, I was so lucky to choose that trade. I was so lucky. I still like it after all these years. I make people happy. That's it, all about making people happy.